Correct. So the bride depicted the oneness relationship between God and man. And so our first text there is Revelation 21 verse 3. Revelation 21 verse 3. And so we want to go in our Bible. Revelation 21 verse 3 says, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. So heaven dwells within the citizens of the kingdom of heaven. Our prototype, Jesus Christ, had heaven dwelling within him as he ministered in the flesh on this earth. Okay, so remember that he consistently told his disciples this. Let's look at John 14 verse 10, for example. John 14 verse 10, it says there, Jesus speaking to his disciples, he said to them, in verse 10, he said to them, Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I say to you, I do not speak of my own. Instead, it is the Father dwelling in me, performing his works. All right. So we had Christ, our prototype, had heaven dwelling within him. Okay. And this was in fulfillment actually of a promise that God made in Leviticus, in the law, in Leviticus 26 verse 11 to 12. Okay, so what Christ said here, saying that the Father was in him and he was doing the works within Christ, and Christ was now dwelling among the disciples with the Father in him. That's a fulfillment of Leviticus 26 verse 11 and 12. Let's see what that says. Okay, Leviticus 26 verse 11 and 12. It says there in verse 11, it says, I will make my dwelling place among you, and my soul will not despise you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. Okay, so here we had Christ walking, he's the Word made flesh, with the Father dwelling in him, and he was walking among Israel. Good? And he made the disciples his people. This was the fulfillment of Leviticus, this promise in Leviticus 26. So when we look at, go back to John 14 and look at verse 7 to 9, it says there, if you, Christ said to his disciples, if you had known me, you would know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him, know my Father, and have seen him. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. Jesus replied, Philip, have I been with you all this time, and still you do not know me? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? So we had here, as Leviticus 26 said, the Father will be walking among his people. Good? That was fulfilled with Christ walking among Israel, with the presence of the Father within. But however, consequently, he promised his disciples that they too would be given an amazing privilege, that the Father would not just dwell among them as he had done during the ministry of Christ, but he would dwell within them, right? Now look in John 17, we see this now. So we had the old covenant promise that the Father will walk among his people being fulfilled when Christ did that. Okay, he walked among his people with the Father dwelling in him. But now Christ makes another promise now, which would be fulfilled after. He says, I am not asking, this is Christ speaking to his Father, he says, I am not asking of them alone, of the disciples alone, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their message. So in other words, the apostolic message now, those who would believe on Christ in the ministry of the apostles. Good? So this promise applies to the apostolic ministry, that all of them who believe on Christ through the apostolic ministry, all of them may be one, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. I have given them the glory you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. I in them, notice now, I in them and you in me, that they may be perfectly united, so that the world may know that you sent me and have loved them just as you have loved me. So this oneness relationship here now, this unity with God and man, was not just for the apostles, but was to be for all those who would believe through the ministry of the apostles, right? Notice that carefully. And what it was a oneness relationship. It was, as it were, Christ and his Father would be a temple, and the believer would be in that temple, as well as the believer would be a temple, and Christ and his Father would be in that temple. Good? So the prayer that Jesus prayed on the night before his crucifixion, as it were, he was making his will, which would go into effect after his death. Let's look at Revelation 21 now. Let's look at Revelation 21 verse 22. Revelation 21 verse 22 to see this. Okay, it says there, talking about the New Jerusalem, it says, but I saw no temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. Okay, so right away this tells us that that entire city was not a physical city, but it is the spiritual reality, and it brings God into relationship with man and man into relationship with God.